I liked how the corridor lights flickered just enough for me to see the reflection of the door numbers. It wasn't the first time I'd stayed in a hotel for work, and normally I found some odd comfort in those muted carpets and artificial potted plants. But that night, the usual hush of the hallway was broken by a muffled sound, low, restrained groans that seemed to come from the far end, near the suite I was approaching. Something about those sounds froze me in place. My breath caught, like some instinct was warning me I shouldn't go closer. But I did. I had to. I'd arrived here unexpectedly. Stephanie, my wife, had told me she was in Milwaukee for an event planning job. Instead, my buddy who worked for a different hotel chain accidentally sent me a forwarded email that displayed her name on the registry for a fancy place in Chicago. Room 713. My first thought was that maybe she'd changed hotels last minute for a better deal or to impress a potential client. But doubt started to gnaw at me. Over the past months, I'd sensed a detachment in her, a certain coldness. She'd still flash a smile at our daughter. But for me, that warmth no longer reached her eyes. So I found myself in my car, driving across town, convinced I was just paranoid, yet unable to stop. Now, standing outside room 713, those muffled moans made my heart pound in my ears. I could almost feel it rattling my entire body. For a moment, I squeezed my eyes shut, tried to swallow the dread. Maybe she was alone, sick, in pain, maybe any excuse but the obvious one. But even before my hand reached for the doorknob, I knew I was lying to myself. When the door slid open an inch, unlocked in their hurry, I guessed. I saw the glint of lamplight against bare skin. And I heard the moans more clearly, no longer muffled by walls. I watched Stephanie's hair drape across her face, her shoulders, the arch of her back, and above her, a man's muscular arms pinned her gently on the bed. My mind refused to register him at first. I stood there, not yet fully comprehending the shape or color of anything, as if my brain short-circuited. She didn't see me. In that split second, I realized how quietly the door had moved. Maybe that was some twisted mercy for me, allowing me a second of numbness before they noticed my presence. My jaw tightened. My vision tunneled. Rage, humiliation, heartbreak, a swirl of everything fought for control of my body. Then my hand slipped off the doorknob, and it swung open wider, hitting the doorstop with a dull thud. "Stephanie," I said, voice trembling. Or maybe I didn't even say her name. Maybe I just thought I did. Everything was out of sync. My pulse, my breathing, the entire world. The man, Alex, I would later learn was his name, snapped his head toward the door. Stephanie's eyes flew open, confusion turning to sheer panic. She scrambled, pulling the sheets around her. He tried to stand, half-dressed, obviously startled. For a long second, nobody moved. I just stood in the doorway, forcing myself not to bolt or scream or do something I'd regret. My fists clenched. My throat burned with words I couldn't quite say. Something in me demanded that I remember this moment in perfect detail, her face contorted with shock. His arms, still braced as if ready to hold her down again. Their shallow, panicked breaths. And then I slowly turned, walked back into the hallway, and let the door swing shut behind me. I thought I heard her call my name, but I'm not sure. My body was on autopilot, carrying me somewhere far from that room. I didn't go home that night. I ended up driving aimlessly until I found myself at a parking lot near an old diner, the kind that still has neon signs flickering outside. I sat there, the engine off, staring at my phone. Thoughts stormed in my head, the imagery of them entwined, the shock, the humiliating betrayal. I recalled every sign I'd ignored. Stephanie's long text messages that she claimed were about work, her subtle shift in tone whenever she said she had to travel for a last-minute meeting, the mechanical kisses she gave me on returning home. I wanted to vomit. I wanted to smash the dashboard. I wanted to do something, but I felt paralyzed. In that moment, my entire identity took a blow. I was Mike Foster, an accountant, a family man who paid the bills, took care of the house, cooked breakfast on weekends, and tried to be a decent father. Now, what was I? A cuckolded fool, too blind to see the blatant truth. Eventually, I forced myself to drive to a cheap motel on the outskirts and spent the night there, if you could call it sleep. In reality, I just stared at the ceiling until dawn. Images of Stephanie, my wife, locked in an embrace with another man haunted me on loop, set to the memory of those moans. By morning, cold logic began to replace the waves of fury. But it wasn't a peaceful, accepting kind of calm. It was a razor-sharp clarity that told me I needed answers. I needed the truth. After a quick rinse in the stained motel shower, I stood in front of the mirror. My face looked older, lines etched with betrayal and exhaustion. My eyes were bloodshot. I thought about my daughter, thinking she was ours, my light in this world. But there had been that creeping question for a while. Something in her features, something that gnawed at me, especially when the dryness grew in our marriage. That day, I decided to dig deeper. If Stephanie was capable of such a lie, I had to confirm all the lies. Every single one. When I arrived home late that afternoon, the house was quiet. Our daughter was at a friend's place for a sleepover. Stephanie had arranged it. In the dim light of our living room, I found her sitting on the couch, elbows on her knees, staring at the blank television screen. A suitcase sat beside her. "Michael," she said, voice trembling, "I'm sorry." I stepped forward, a single motion that made her recoil. I didn't say a word, just stared at her. She looked smaller than usual, as though guilt had crushed her posture. My mind kept flashing to that moment in the hotel. The way she'd arched her back for someone else. The way she used to arch her back for me. And in the room, it seemed darker, as if the house itself shared my contempt. "Who is he?" I asked. She pressed her lips together, taking too long to respond. "Alex Hayes," she finally said. "He manages hotels. I met him months ago, while planning a corporate event. It started small, just talk. Then, I'm so sorry." I inhaled slowly. "Why?" She hesitated. "I don't have a simple answer. It wasn't because of anything you did. It just happened." My fists tightened at "it just happened," as though her infidelity was a traffic accident. "Stephanie," I said, struggling to keep my voice steady, "don't feed me cliches. Tell me the truth." She gulped. I needed excitement. I was feeling stuck, like we were on autopilot. He was new. I let that sink in. It sounded so small, so trivial compared to the devastation she had caused. "You realize," I said, "whatever we had might be destroyed forever." She lowered her gaze. "I know." I moved past her, walked upstairs to our bedroom. I stared at the bed where we'd once laughed, cuddled, planned our future. My chest burned with a torrent of emotions. Disgust, sorrow, anger. Downstairs, she remained on the couch, probably too scared to follow. A part of me wanted to confront her, to scream, to throw her out, but I recalled the moment in the hallway. I'd chosen to turn away rather than lash out. Something in me rejected the idea of giving her that raw display of fury. Instead, I wanted the truth, every piece of it. I needed to know how long, how deep, if there was anything else I was missing. I didn't speak much to her in the next few days. We existed in a silent standoff. She tried to apologize again, to explain, but the words went nowhere. I asked, "Have there been others?" She swore there hadn't, that Alex was the only time. But my trust in her had shattered. And behind all of this, one horrifying question lingered. Was I truly the father of our daughter? It started as a thought I despised for even existing. Of course she's my daughter. We had planned for her together, right? But then I remembered that Stephanie had gone on several girls' weekends around that time, allegedly with old college friends. A distant memory of the dates, the suspicious timing, pricked at me like a barbed wire. I called a lab, asked about paternity tests. I had to provide a DNA sample from both the child and me. The decision felt monstrous. I loved my daughter more than anything, but the unstoppable doubt was corroding my sanity. Stephanie tried to talk me out of it. "Michael, please. She's yours," she said, tears in her eyes, but they failed to reach me. The memory of her body entwined with Alex overshadowed every tear. I took a swab from my daughter one afternoon, under the guise of checking for some medical predisposition. She was half oblivious, trusting me, her father, or the man she believed to be her father. My hands shook the whole time. Then the wait for the results. The days dragged on with an agonizing slowness. I found myself replaying the entire timeline of my relationship with Stephanie. The laughter, the road trips, the wedding, the night we found out she was pregnant, and how I'd carried her around the living room out of sheer joy. The memory of her grin on that day cut deep now. I remembered how I'd kissed her belly, whispering to the little life inside. I thought about confronting Alex, the lover. But anger was too raw, too large for me to channel it into a direct confrontation. Instead, I turned inward, combing through finances, phone records, searching for every piece of evidence that would confirm what else she'd lied about. My approach became almost detective-like, listing timelines, cross-referencing, checking receipts for her trips. And in the gloom of those nights, the house felt stifling. When Stephanie tried to approach me, I'd just hold up a hand, or a single glare would silence her. I don't think I've ever wanted so badly to cry, but the tears wouldn't come. It was as though my emotions were locked behind a dam. The only outward sign of my turmoil was the tension in my jaw, and the restless pacing at odd hours. One morning, the DNA test results arrived. I took the envelope to my car and opened it there, alone. The dryness in my mouth was overwhelming. Each word on the report hammered me with a final blow. Probability of paternity, 0%. I don't recall how long I sat there, staring at that piece of paper. Eventually, my heart started pounding. My throat felt tight, and for a moment, I thought I'd choke. I gripped the steering wheel, the edge of the paper trembling in my other hand. The revelation was both shocking and numbingly familiar. A part of me had guessed this all along. When I stepped back into the house, Stephanie saw my face and began sobbing before I said a word. She must have seen the truth in my eyes. She tried to reach for me. I jerked away. "Michael, please, listen, I didn't know. I swear." "It was." "Stop," I hissed. The word came out like a bullet. My voice broke, but I forced the rest out. "She's not mine. You lied to me for years, and you just let me believe." She tried to speak, but I cut her off again. The dryness in my throat was excruciating. I tasted copper in my mouth, as if my rage had a flavor. "All those times you watched me hold her," I said quietly. "All those times you saw how proud I was. And you never said a word." Tears streamed down her cheeks, but they meant nothing to me. I was beyond the point of comforting her or letting her comfort me. "Get out," I said. "Just go." She staggered back. "Michael, she needs you. Please don't do this. We can fix this. Just talk to me." I only glared at her, silent. That moment, I realized the unspoken truth. She was right. Our daughter was innocent, and she had grown up believing I was her father. But the betrayal was too large to process in an instant. I needed space, room to breathe, to figure out what the hell to do with my life. Stephanie slowly gathered a few things and left, sobbing. I heard the door close, and it felt final, like the seal of a tomb. For the next week, I barely ate or slept. I called in sick at work and spent hours wandering the streets, trying to outrun my own thoughts. Everything seemed meaningless. The fatherhood that had once defined me was revealed to be a sham. Now I was haunted by the image of that hotel room, by the DNA results, by the memory of Stephanie's excuses. Eventually, an idea started to form. It wasn't a sudden, vengeful plan. More like a slow, methodical need to return the pain. Because what else could I do? Yell, scream, destroy furniture. That would be too easy, too brief. The kind of pain I felt demanded something deeper, something that would linger. One evening, I started collecting photos, old pictures of Stephanie and me, pictures of the three of us as a family, pictures from the honeymoon, places we'd visited. Then I sorted them, attached little notes, brief reminders, dates, inside jokes, half sweet, half poisoned memories. I sealed them in envelopes. I recalled something. The piece of official stationery from the DNA testing center. I took a smaller envelope, folded the original results, and enclosed them with a note that read, "Not me." Then I addressed it to the last known place Stephanie was staying. I wrote out a single line. "You destroyed this." It wasn't about justice or redemption. It was about leaving her with shards of what she'd broken, shards she could never fully sweep away. Days later, I sent the first letter. No return address. Just a single photo from our wedding day. Stephanie in her white dress, beaming with an innocence that now felt like a lie. I wrote on the back. Was it a lie back then, too? I didn't sleep much that night. Images of her tears flickered in my mind, but each time I remembered her betrayal, I felt a raw, scorching satisfaction in continuing. I mailed more letters, snapshots of her holding our daughter in the hospital, me standing proudly beside them. Another from a trip to Florida, where I had my arm around her waist. Each had a pointed message on the back, short and cutting. I wasn't naive enough to think this would fix me, but it was the only method I had left to cope. Meanwhile, I neglected the rest of my life. I filed for a leave of absence from work. My boss seemed sympathetic, though he didn't know the full story. The house became a crypt of memories, every room a testament to our family that never was. I tried to avoid looking at pictures of my daughter smiling at me. That hurt cut deeper than anything else. My phone rang a few times, Stephanie's name on the screen. I ignored it. Then I got messages from an unknown number, probably her new phone or something borrowed. I didn't bother to read them. One night, I was pacing in the living room when the doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw her silhouette. I hesitated, but curiosity got the better of me. I opened it. She stood there, hair damp from the drizzle outside, eyes puffy. She looked worn and small, not the vibrant Stephanie I once knew. "Michael," she whispered, "I know what you're doing. These letters, photos, please stop. You're hurting me. And it's terrifying." I stared at her. Did it hurt to lie to me for all these years? Was that terrifying for you? She swallowed. "I deserve your anger. I know that." My voice came out in a low hiss. "You have no idea how deep this goes." She trembled. "You think you're punishing me, but you're punishing yourself too. You're pushing away your own daughter. She still loves you, no matter what." My hand shook, but my voice steadied. "Is she mine? By blood? No, she isn't. And now you want me to ignore that for your convenience. You kept me in the dark for a decade." She started crying again, but I pressed on, my voice cracking. "Do you have any clue how disgusting I feel, how worthless? I gave my life to a child that isn't mine, and you never had the decency to warn me. She needed a father," Stephanie said, "and you were that man. You were good to her, everything, except that one secret." I almost laughed, but it came out as a strangled cough. "That one secret is the entire foundation of fatherhood." I paused, my breath ragged. "Go. I don't want you here." When she didn't move, I stepped closer, my eyes locked on hers. "Leave." She parted her lips, maybe to protest, but found no words. Lowering her head, she walked off into the rain. I slammed the door, locked it, then stood in the foyer, trembling from the adrenaline. A week passed. Then two. I continued mailing photos, each with a different memory turned sour. I wasn't sure if the addresses were reaching her directly or forwarded by some friend. Perhaps she'd changed her lodging arrangement. I didn't care. In my mind, these envelopes were my final statement. Let them haunt her. Let them be a slow poison. One day, as I was rummaging through a drawer, I found an old phone. Stephanie's phone from years ago. It still turned on. The battery was almost dead, but I saw a string of messages from an unknown contact. My suspicion soared. With quickened fingers, I tapped in. Most were mundane, scheduling meetings, planning trips. But the last few were explicit. They revealed that she'd known about the paternity test possibility. She'd even voiced her guilt about it to him, probably to Alex Hayes. Words like worried he'll find out, and if he does, everything's over. She'd known this entire time that I wasn't the father. She'd faked her surprise. The magnitude of her deception slammed into me, fresh and brutal. I felt so hollow I could barely breathe. My chest felt like it caved in. For a moment, I imagined punching walls, or hunting down Alex, but even that seemed pointless. The truth was all I needed. This wretched, scorching truth. That night, I wrote my final letter to her, except this time, it was a typed letter I placed in a small envelope. I included a single Polaroid of me holding the paternity results, expression grim. Underneath, I wrote, "Not me. Never was." I pressed the envelope close. Then I slid it under a cushion I suspected she would check if she ever came back here. Part of me wanted her to see it too late, to find it only when everything was truly beyond repair. I found myself whispering, "You did this, Stephanie. You forced my hand." Days bowled into nights. I stared at the photos on the walls, tried to imagine ripping them down, but instead I left them up, like a gallery of lost illusions. I listened to the voicemail from my daughter, who didn't understand why I wasn't around, why I hadn't called. She was crying, her little voice asking, "Daddy, why don't you come tuck me in?" It shattered me, but I couldn't see her yet. I was too broken. I started drinking more than usual. The whiskey burned my throat, offering a fleeting numbness. Sometimes I'd wake up on the couch, disoriented, the TV still on. Then, out of nowhere, Alex Hayes called me. Probably got my number from Stephanie, or some mutual contact. I hesitated but answered. "Michael," he started, voice measured, "It's Alex. I know it's awkward, but we need to talk." I pictured his face from that memory in the hotel room. My grip on the phone tightened. "So you can gloat." He paused. "No, it's not like that. Look, I'm not proud. I never intended to rip your family apart. You deserve better." I almost laughed. "Don't feed me pity. You have no right." A long silence. Then he sighed. "I'm sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything. But if you need anything or want to talk, I'm here." "Are you serious?" I said, voice rising. "You think I want to confide in the man who slept with my wife, who fathered the child I thought was mine for nearly 10 years? He said nothing. Maybe he realized how absurd his offer sounded. I inhaled. "Don't call again." Then I hung up. Just like that. I began to shake uncontrollably. The phone slipped from my hand. I leaned against the wall, letting the rage and helplessness churn in my stomach. Time moved forward in a blur. I found it impossible to resume normal life. My boss urged me to meet with him. He was supportive, said he'd hold my position for a while, but I felt no desire to return to spreadsheets and balance sheets. The day after that phone call, I began planning how to finalize my revenge on Stephanie, and I realized something profound. All these letters, the paternity revelation, the emotional torment, they were destroying me just as much as they were destroying her. But I couldn't stop. It was like an addiction. Every memory we shared was a fresh wound I had to press, a scab I had to tear off so it would bleed again. Late one night, I wrote a note detailing every feeling of betrayal, every moment I'd discovered her lie, every sign I'd overlooked. I sealed it in an envelope with a single Polaroid of her hugging me after our wedding vows. On the back, I wrote, "You could have told me, but you chose not to." I mailed it the next morning. The next few days, I wondered if she'd respond, or if she'd come banging on my door again. Part of me hoped she would, so I could see her face twisted in regret. But there was only silence. Then I received a small package in the mail with no return address. Inside was a silver bracelet, Stephanie's bracelet, the one with her initials, and a letter. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," it read in her handwriting. "I know what I did to you is unforgivable. But please, for her sake, don't vanish from our daughter's life entirely. She loves you more than you realize. I'm not telling you what to do, but at least remember the bond you've had with her since day one. I'm the monster, not her." I closed the box, anger coursing through me. It felt like a last-ditch plea for me to back down. But I also felt a pang deep in my gut. She was right. My daughter had done nothing wrong, and she still believed me to be her father. My conflict raged. One day, I finally decided to meet Alex, but on my own terms. The idea revolted me, but I wanted to see the man who'd fathered my daughter. I needed answers that Stephanie wasn't giving, or that I refused to hear from her. We met at a neutral spot, a coffee shop near the Loop. I arrived early, sat in the back. When Alex walked in, wearing a dress shirt and slacks, scanning for me, a wave of hatred struck me so hard I almost left. But I forced myself to stay. He spotted me, approached with careful steps. "Thanks for coming," he said. I didn't reply. I just gestured for him to sit. He ordered a black coffee. I left mine untouched. Then, in a quiet voice, I said, "Why?" He seemed unsure how to answer. "I never planned to hurt you, or her. It started as an attraction, a fling. Then, it got more serious. I found out she was pregnant, but she told me she was sure you were the father. She never said otherwise. Over time, I suspected, but I let her handle it. Maybe I was a coward." My fists clenched under the table. "You realize the damage you've done?" He nodded, rubbing his palms nervously. "Yes, but I can't erase it. I told her to come clean, but she kept putting it off. And now?" I asked coldly. "And now," he exhaled, "I'm not sure. I don't want to disrupt your daughter's life more than it already is. But I guess I'm biologically tied to her. I've never been a dad, and I don't know what that looks like. I don't even know if I'm ready." A mirthless laugh escaped me. "Stephanie left that little detail out, didn't she? Now you're stuck with fatherhood you never asked for, while I was tricked into it." He looked down. "I'm sorry." I studied him, trying to see what Stephanie found so irresistible. He was physically fit, had confidence, and easy charm. Maybe she needed that spark. Maybe my stable routines bored her. But that didn't justify anything. I took a breath, forced my shoulders down. "This changes nothing between us. I don't want any contact with you after this. Understood?" He nodded. "Understood. If you ever change your mind." I stood abruptly. "I won't." Leaving him there, I walked out into the fresh air, which felt somehow suffocating. But there was also a grim sense of closure. He was a man, not a mythical beast, and yet my hatred was as strong as ever. Soon after, I decided I couldn't stay in that house any longer. The place was riddled with memories. So I found a short-term rental across town, packed my essentials, and left. Before I did, I slid another envelope under a pillow on our bed. It contained a final note, almost like a farewell. "You destroyed what was ours. Now I destroy what's left of you." It felt melodramatic, but it embodied my state of mind. Vengeful, bitter, hollow. Every time I sealed a note like that, I reminded myself that she would carry that guilt forever, the same way I'd carry this wound. My illusions of fatherhood, love, loyalty, they were all illusions no more. I sent a text to Stephanie. "The house is yours. I don't want it. Let me know if you decide to sell." That was it. She tried calling, but I didn't pick up. I only listened to her voicemail. "Michael, please, let's discuss this. Don't just vanish. Don't punish her because of me." Her voice cracked with desperation, but I was long past caring. I sank into an abyss over the next few weeks. Food lost its taste, days blurred, nights were restless. I avoided family and friends, not wanting to explain anything. On the rare occasions I had to talk to someone, I spoke in short, clipped sentences. There was no way to describe the weight I carried. The sense of betrayal, the shattered identity, the obsession with punishing her. Then, one cold morning, as I stared into the bathroom mirror of my rental, I realized how broken I looked. Bloodshot eyes, unkempt stubble, shoulders hunched. I recalled that conversation I'd had with Stephanie, the one where she said, "You're punishing yourself too." She was right. My entire life had become an instrument of torment. I was stuck in a cycle, and it was rotting me from the inside. The revenge letters, photos, notes, they gave me momentary release, but afterward, I felt emptier than before. I stood there, leaning on the sink, letting the faucet run. That was the moment I understood that if I kept going like this, I'd be a shell of a man. My daughter, innocent of all this, deserved better, even if she wasn't my blood. If I vanished forever, I'd inflict trauma on a child who only knew me as dad. I couldn't live with that. I decided to take one last step to finalize my revenge, and also to free myself. That afternoon, I went to a print shop and had them enlarge one photo of Stephanie and Alex together. An image I'd found on her old phone, presumably taken during some private date. The two of them were smiling, leaning close. I printed it on a thick poster board. At the bottom, I wrote a single word in thick black marker. Mine. I mailed it directly to her new address. One of my detective-like searches had uncovered it. No note, no letter, just that single word. A savage reminder of what she had stolen from me. The fatherhood that should have been mine. The marriage that should have been safe. But as I walked away from the post office, I felt a strange calm settle in. Maybe I'd crossed the final line. Maybe I'd ended the cycle of torment with this last blow. In the days that followed, I gradually began sorting through my life. I reached out to my sister, who lived back in Syracuse, told her I needed a break and might come visit. She'd always been my anchor, though we hadn't talked much recently. I started checking job listings in that area, considering a move back to my hometown. A fresh start, away from the ghosts of Chicago. But first, I had one more conversation I needed to have, this time with my daughter. I contacted "Are you coming home, Daddy?" I swallowed hard. "I'm not sure, honey. Things are complicated right now. But I wanted to see you, to let you know how much I love you, no matter what." She looked at me quizzically, sensing something was off, but nodded, trusting me. Stephanie lingered by the table, tense. I invited her to sit. For a few moments, I tried to talk to my daughter about school, her friends, how she was doing in her dance class. We chatted, though my voice felt shaky. Then, carefully, I glanced at Stephanie. "Could you, give me a minute alone with her?" I asked softly. She hesitated but obliged, stepping out of earshot. I cupped my daughter's hand. "Listen," I said gently, "I know things might feel strange right now, but I'm always here for you, even if I'm not in the house. Understand?" Her eyes brimmed with tears. "I don't want you to go away again, Daddy." "I know," I whispered, hugging her. "And I'm sorry. Sometimes grown-ups go through things, but it doesn't mean you did anything wrong. You're perfect, okay?" Her small arms tightened around me. I felt the tears burning my own eyes, but I refused to let them fall. "Not here. Not now." After a minute, Stephanie came back. She avoided my gaze, but I gestured for her to sit. Our daughter stepped away to admire a display of pastries at the counter. I spoke quietly. "I'm not going to keep punishing you the way I have. But I can't be in your life the same way anymore. I can't be in that house. Can't pretend that nothing happened." Her eyes glistened. "I understand. I thank you for at least seeing her. She needs you, Michael, even if..." "Don't." I cut in. "Don't say any more. You already said everything in that hotel room." She lowered her head. I looked at her for a long moment, a complex swirl of love, hatred, memory, and pity. "Take care of her," I said at last. "I'll keep in touch. That's all I can do." Then I stood. My daughter turned, saw me leaving, ran up for another hug. I held her tight, inhaling her scent, memorizing this moment. For better or worse, she was still the child I'd raised, the little girl who used to giggle whenever I tossed her in the air. She started crying softly. I bent down, wiped her tears. "Hey, I'll call you soon, okay?" She nodded, sniffling. Stephanie stood to the side, tears rolling silently down her face. My gaze flicked to her, cold, distant. Then I walked out, each step feeling like a lifetime. Several weeks passed. I put the house on the market with her reluctant agreement. There was no point in holding on to it. I'd found a job opening in my hometown, something in financial management that would let me start fresh. Slowly, I started packing up what little I cared to keep. My final move-out day was quiet, lonely, a last walk through the empty rooms. The new owners would come soon, so I left the keys on the kitchen counter, along with one final note to Stephanie, in case she came by. "Whatever remains is yours. The rest is gone." I drove away. There's a certain hush that falls after a storm, a stillness that's almost eerie. That's what my life felt like in the aftermath. The revenge cycle had burned itself out. Sure, the damage was done. I had no illusions about that. Stephanie would bear those scars, and so would I. We'd both pay for it, in different ways, for the rest of our lives. But I needed to survive now, in some way that left me a chance to rebuild. I rented a small apartment near my new workplace in Syracuse. My sister dropped by with casseroles and fussed over me, telling me I looked thinner and more ragged than ever. I let her fuss. Maybe I needed a little mothering. At night, I found myself staring at the phone, debating whether to call my daughter. The longing was painful, but I didn't want to crumble. Eventually, I mustered the courage and dialed. Hearing her voice warmed a part of me that I thought had turned permanently cold. She chattered about her day, her classes, her friends, oblivious to the adult heartbreak swirling around her. Sometimes I still see the images, Stephanie's betrayal in that hotel, the paternity test results. Those memories will never vanish, and sometimes I think of the quiet vengeance I unleashed. The photographs, the letters, the final giant print I mailed. I wonder if that was too cruel, or not enough. But it happened. It's done. The difference now is that the anger no longer eats me alive. I can live with myself, even if part of me remains broken. Maybe in time, I'll find a version of peace, but I won't pretend forgiveness is on the horizon. On a cold evening, months later, I sat in my tiny living room, the boxes mostly unpacked. The phone buzzed. A text from Stephanie. "I found your last letter, the one you left in the cushion. I'm sorry for everything." I stared at it for a long time. In the corner, the TV droned softly with a news broadcast. Outside, snow drifted under the glow of a street lamp. 1,000 thoughts whirled in my mind. Memories of our marriage, our child's birth, the laughter we once shared, the heartbreak she inflicted. I typed back a single reply. "You'll never know how sorry I am, too. But this is the end." No more words. I placed the phone aside, exhaled, and let silence fill the room. For the first time in a long while, that silence didn't crush me. It simply was. I survived. And she would live with it, haunted by what she had done, by the fragments of a life that could have been. Perhaps she would try to put herself back together, just as I was doing, but in a different way. Knowing what she destroyed could never be fully mended. Was it worth it? The revenge, the letters, the pictures. Maybe not, but it was all I had. Now I stand at the edge of a new life, uncertain and alone, yet strangely calm. The mirror still shows me an older, tired man, but there's a flicker in my eyes I didn't have before. Something that says I made it through the worst. I might call my daughter tomorrow, or maybe the next day. She's still the only piece of the past I can't completely abandon. The rest of it, my illusions of a perfect family, my trust in Stephanie, lies behind me, in shards, too sharp to pick up without drawing blood. So I'll leave those shards where they fell and keep walking forward. And maybe, just maybe, that final step away from the wreckage is enough for me to feel alive again.